Today's topic is...
How to Poorhammer.
What's a Poorhammer? Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to WAYPN. I'm Cal.
And I'm Sunny.
Today we're going to be responding in kind to a shout out by the Poorhammer podcast with How to Poorhammer, asking the question that all Warhammer peoples should be asking. Should you be 3D printing?
Don't they usually cover official product and stuff?
Yeah, it'd be a bit rude if we just stole their format. Instead, let's talk about something that they haven't.
Makes sense. So what are we going to be talking about?
Core issues,
Initial cost,
ongoing cost,
and conclusion.
Let's get to it.
Core issues. One of the biggest core issues when it comes to 3D printing is it actually cheaper? Now, I can hear the 3D printing fans screaming, yes. But we're not so sure.
I think this is the best comparison for Warhammer fans. Which is cheaper, Warhammer or Magic the Gathering? Now you can comment. I can hear the rage stewing.
Warhammer has a large initial layout cost, but a lower ongoing cost. However, more recently, that has been changing with how frequently new updates are coming out.
However, Magic is a very mixed bag. Is it cheaper? Well, if you don't want to play in tournaments and you want to play pauper decks, sure. But that is a very, very specific form of Magic. Magic overall, and this is coming from someone who used to grind GPTs back when they were a thing, and a brother who has won money at a GP, Magic is much more expensive. However, it isn't as upfront with the cost as Warhammer is.
I think that 3D printing is Magic the Gathering. It is toxic. Like literally, the resin is carcinogenic. If you want to make the most out of it, you have to make a lot of small purchases. There is lots of hidden costs like gloves, cleaning chemicals, storage, health and safety costs, setting up a specific area, and so on and so on.
However, if you play Magic in a very specific way, if you 3D print in a very specific way, it will cost far less. Playgroup.
Who you play with matters. Who are you playing with? Where are you playing? What are you playing?
Let's answer that in turn. Who are you playing with? A close group of friends? A local club? A shop? Or a tournament?
Those last ones cross over with what and where, so we will cover them in order.
If you are playing with friends, be sure that they will accept 3D prints. Do I think your friends should accept 3D prints? 100%. I believe that they should. But should, would, and will are different things. I could just say, get better friends, but let's think about it from their perspective. Maybe they've spent thousands of dollars on this hobby and they feel that you're coming into it relatively for free. I have less sympathy for that than this second reason.
They are a grognard, but perhaps not by choice. Age or commitment has made it so if it's not an official model, well, they don't really know what you're playing, especially if you're playing a custom army. This, I think, could be remedied a lot more easily, but you would have to put the work in.
Which is something that I once did for my custom kill team years ago. I had a laminate of my team, which was made up from all GW bits, but it was a bit difficult for people to recognize some of the characters. I had photos of each team member as well as stats attached to them.
We think if you want to play a custom army, warband, kill team, or whatever it may be, it is up to you to help your opponent understand it.
It's just good etiquette. Clubs.
A local club shouldn't be different from a close group of friends. However,
that doesn't mean it will be. Clubs have rules, and they should have rules. If you don't agree with the club's rules, don't play there. Simple as.
Some clubs won't allow 3D printed miniatures for whatever reason. Maybe they have deals with Warhammer or Games Workshop. That makes it so they won't allow it. So on and so on. This is something to consider. Another thing to consider is, do you fit in?
I know this sounds like a rude thing to say, but it's something that you have to consider. If you are 3D printing, because if you are the only one or the one that has the majority of 3D prints and you don't fit in, well then,
please consider that they may arbitrarily change the rules on you. We have had experiences with a club that has, gone very, very badly. We think that some of the people in there are very rotten apples, but it only takes one to spoil the lot, right?
Once again, should it be this way?
No, you should be able to come into this club and be able to play your custom army the way you want to. But regardless, these are considerations that you should be thinking about.
Shops.
Shops or shop gaming groups. This is where the where really matters. Does your shop support 3D printing? Can you get 3D printed supplies from there? That is super important. This is the one place where I will say, yeah, it's okay for them to say no to your 3D miniatures. Why here and nowhere else? They are trying to make a living and you have to pay the rent. Basic shop courtesy is to buy something from there to show your goodwill.
However, if they're renting out tables, that is a totally different story. If they say no and you're renting out a table, not cool. People running stores rarely make a lot of money off this. They're just trying to make their hobby work for them. Most of them are the unsung hobby heroes of our community. So please, take care of them.
And if it is a Warhammer store, come on. Really? Are you really trying this? Come on, man. Don't be that guy.
Tournaments.
This is where the what and who clash quite badly.
Now, I've heard all sorts of things about Warhammer tournaments, but I haven't participated in a lot. I've been in more Magic tournaments than I can count, but Warhammer, very few.
They sound scary to me.
Well, you did have that experience with the Killer DM, so I can see why you would say that. But I've heard mixed things about Warhammer tournaments, both good and bad. I hear that it's all about the culture of the tournament/area.
With that said, tournaments will have certain expectations. These aren't casual events, though some tournaments are casual. I think perhaps they need a better name. There is multiple reasons why 3D prints may be banned. Number 1, they have deals with Warhammer or Games Workshop. Number 2, they want official models only for reasons of recognition. WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. Number 3, problematic models. Unfortunately, some people don't understand social rules, so they will bring lewd or inappropriate models, and so the organizers just do a blanket ban not to deal with it.
These are all things you need to consider before printing up 3,000 points of Krieg models for your grand adventure.
I think covering tournaments also covers the what of competitive play and things there.
Finally, one thing not covered is where. This isn't as likely, but seen some odd things in the last few years, so consider it.
If outdoor play is something you do, resin models react to heat poorly, so that is something to consider. Also, soft plastic models as well.
I think all of this can be summarized into a single sentence. Will you be able to use your 3D printed models? It's like anything else. If you have a new electric car, that's great. Are there charge stations in your area? If there aren't, well, perhaps that wasn't the best idea.
The 3D print fans may be saying, okay, so it's fine so long as it isn't banned. That's stupid. Well, be that as it may, that is the way the cookie crumbles. You can have the most beautiful 3D printed models with the most fantastic paint jobs in the world. But if it can't be used by you, what good are they?
Printing space. Okay, so this one seems kind of obvious because it is, but do you have an area to print? Because the fumes aren't exactly good for people.
Do you have a young one in your home? Someone with special needs? And so on and so on. It might sound basic, but the magic of 3D printing lures people in without them thinking about these things.
Do you have somewhere where you can store and use dangerous chemicals? Because you're likely going to be housing resin, alcohol, and other chemicals that aren't exactly the friendliest. Now the part I loathe. But we have to bring it up, because if we don't, well, unfortunately, it might bite you. Government.
Some governments are extremely restrictive when it comes to some of the chemicals used in 3D printing, like owning or having more pure forms of alcohol is banned. We don't make the rules, your government does, and unfortunately, some governments are extremely paranoid. If you start ordering a whole lot of chemicals, some governments can be douchey.
If you are in the majority of areas that people watch us, you should be good. But once again, we're going over things that you should be thinking about before you start 3D printing. Because for most people, the investment is significant enough that you should be thinking about it. Initial cost.
Here's the biggest problem with Warhammer. The initial cost getting into Warhammer is more than an entry-level printer.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it because I probably got resin on my hands and you don't want that in your system. But yeah, an entry-level printer costs less than the cheapest force you can assemble. Now it's time for some personal bias. There is only one company I know of in the 3D printing industry that isn't Chinese. Even the ones that claim to be American are still Chinese built, and that one company is froze on, which are Taiwanese. This may be very important for certain people, such as myself, because we are Australian.
We really like the Frozon brand too. We have always used them. We are not sponsored by them, but if they want to send us a printer and sponsor us, we are more than happy to take up the offer because we are really impressed by them. The print screen size, the touchpad interface, it was more or less just plug and play.
But we 100% believe that there will be people with different experiences from us. And we did splurge quite a bit on getting the Frozon Sonic Mighty 8K, which is just a beautiful machine. We really do enjoy it.
I think it may be at this point that some of the 3D print fans may be getting that we don't hate 3D printing.
However, this is the problem.
Going off the standard minimum wage after tax for an Australian, getting that printer would have cost 2 weeks' wages. And from what I have seen and heard, you pretty much get what you pay for.
A lot of people came out and bought 3D printers in my area, only for most of them to be broken. Only one person and one shop that I know of still have a functioning 3D printer.
This, I think, is the problem. These aren't for klutzes. They aren't for people who don't take care. Plastic models are actually pretty forgiving with what you can do to them, but 3D printers, well, if you knock them about even accidentally, don't have them on a proper stable table, well, expect the worst.
I would say when it comes to the initial cost, it beats Warhammer every time. But even if you're going to get a big beast like I did, she's a good girl, it still beats the initial cost.
But you knew there was a but coming. There are alternative ways to start with Warhammer, and things like eBay, Gumtree, your area's version of the buy swap stuff, local swap meets, and so on are all a lot cheaper. However, still compared to the initial cost of a 3D printer, an entry-level printer wins out. Except then there's the next section.
Ongoing costs. Ongoing cost is split into two sections, resin and everything else, because this is the problem. There are so many ongoing hidden costs for 3D printing.
Gloves, wet wipes, paper towel, masks, cleaning chemicals.
Oh yeah, I guess that's it.
What about a wash station, curing station, UV torch, plastic spatula thingy, scraper? No, that's the metal one. Or the...
Okay, we get it, but those are initial costs.
No they aren't.
Excuse me?
Because I have seen it with you. You get one thing and then you're like, I really need this thing, or I should get one of these things, and then I need to get this thing to make these things work better.
Okay, so your point is there's an almost endless series of accessories. The next perfect tool. However, isn't that all of hobbying? There's always the next big thing, or, you want to fix some real or imagined problem. Isn't that the same when it comes to 3D printing?
Cleaning products will need to be replaced. Your alcohol will only last for so long. Even thinking about sunlight with some products will have those cleaners go gooey and so on. Plus the gloves, wet wipes, paper towels, and all of these other things. It adds up. Then there is...
resin. Okay, I'm fully ready to admit it might be me. Maybe I'm the stuffer, but resin seems to be a problem. Some resins work like a dream. Other resins, you need to maybe mix them a little with another resin and that doesn't go well. And some of the times it seems to be about cost. And I've gotten some great results from low-cost resin and horrid results from high-cost resin. And before you say it, just use the settings on the bottle. Yes, thank you. Where would have I ever been without you?
The issue is not all resins are made the same, and some are great and some aren't, but you don't know until you try them yourself, because some people swear by certain resins and other people swear by others, and everyone is super tribal. It seems very difficult to get unbiased information about them.
Now I'm relating my experience. I'm sure that other people have a set and forget mentality, but yeah, I don't know. That's just my experience.
Which leads us to...
time cost.
Time is the hidden cost with 3D printing. You're going to take a long time to figure things out, which is fine if you are in the early stages of your life, but maybe not if you're a dad, if you have a career you're working hard in, or if you have anything eating up a lot of your time. Maybe it's not for you.
You will have failed prints. You will have issues with something.
Time is the currency of life, and if you have watched us thus far, I hope we have been spending it well, because all of this, well, from what we have seen, is this. Most people just say, yeah, 3D printing is the best, it's the greatest, but there is no issues with it ever. However, in our experience, there is. which leads us to
Conclusion.
So, is 3D printing worth it, Cal?
Yes, without a doubt, for someone who is a dedicated hobbyist, and if you have watched thus far, you 100% are a dedicated hobbyist.
Okay, so why all the warnings?
Because people deserve to know the downsides of 3D printing. People deserve to know that there are hidden costs. Bigger costs being your time. Just setting up prints where your computer has a near meltdown because you're trying to fill up a plate.
So often people want to force their thing onto other people, but we don't. Is 3D printing worth it? Yes.
Yes, it opens a realm of possibilities not previously able to be accessed. A whole new miniature. Forget that. Terrain, customized bits, tools, everything.
There is so much that you can do with 3D printing. There are fantastic lines out there. Our personal favorite is Heroes Infinite by Raging Heroes, but
reptilian overlords are hitting it out of the park again and again. One-page rules are changing the entire gaming field. Warg Name is selling you custom paint stations. Archvillain Games giving adventures in painting as well as actual printed adventures. Cast and Play, amazing terrain that you will just be blown away by, and so many more. But these are the guys that just cost money. There are people out there doing amazing stuff for free. Just the most amazing stuff ever. Look at all of this. Renditions that are better than Games Workshop with so many of them. People keeping abandoned game lines left to die alive. People turning literal trash into terrain. People upcycling. One of the few occasions where you can say the possibilities are endless.
But you aren't. You are just you. And you need to remember that. You don't have infinite time, and in a realm of infinite possibilities, you can get lost.
3D printing is a hobby in of itself. You need to treat it that way, not the magic solution to the cost of Warhammer. It's a rabbit hole.
Just like the rest of this hobby, that rabbit hole can be a great thing and lead to great discoveries. But if you are going to jump in, don't you dare say no one warned you.
We wish you luck on your grand adventure, be that this new journey into 3D printing or your hobbying in general. And of course, as always, keep those brushes wet. Bye-bye. So as you guys know, usually at the end of these, we have a bit of a skit or we do a story or something. And this time we wanted to let our hair down and respond to the Poorhammer podcast.
With the Poorhammer podcast, it was the first time that we actually had a moment to see how far our reach was going. Usually we have a bit of a tunnel vision with just grinding and getting a video out every week and trying to stay ahead and making sure that people actually enjoy our videos. And we're very in our own heads about these things.
Well, I'm not sure that, I guess you're much more in your own head than I am because I'm the one who's looking at the comments a lot. And some of the times the things on shorts, well, let's just put it this way. I understand why the Poorhammer podcast puts so much emphasis on, like, try and be normal people at the start of their videos.
Right, because we don't have the best commentary some of the times.
Some of the times, but other times it's great and, like, it's so up and down, and so you have a really hard time telling where you're at. So the reason why this shout out was so important to us is two reasons. There's this thing called dead internet theory, and it posits that 90% of all internet interactions are just from bots, right?
Yeah.
And text is the worst way to interact with people. Put on top of that, like, some people aren't even themselves when they're responding to you. They're like the avatar of somebody else's opinion.
Yeah, and because of that, it was really good to see the Poorhammer podcast shout us out because we now know real people are watching us.
I think it was more than that. I think it was like all of the people going, hey, look at this. You're being recognized by these people.
I think it's that acknowledgement that really makes us feel like we ourselves are also real creators. We're not just people constantly pushing content out there, hoping for something to catch on.
By pushing out content, you mean like we're sort of screaming into the void and you're not sure whether anyone will like this, is what you're saying.
Yeah, if it'll reach people.
I think that we always had a really interesting voice. We talked about subjects that nobody else did, and that's why I thought, hey, you know what? That's what you got to do. If you're looking at a niche and it's not being filled, that's what you've got to do. You got to talk about things that no one else is.
Yeah, but the issue with that is also because you're a niche, it's also harder to get the attention on what it is that we're talking about.
But it's kind of ironic because what we are doing is we're sort of like, here are some general painting concepts that you guys should know and learn and stuff like that. And some of the times when we're talking about things, it's a bit maddening because we're like, here's some very basic things. And people are like, how dare you? And I think that's why we look at the Poorhammer podcast and we're like, oh,
we're not going crazy.
Yeah, like normal people are just like, oh, yeah, no, that was cool. I thought I knew most of this stuff, but, it's interesting listening to it. And I'm like, oh, okay, we're not the devil incarnate or, whatever it is. But I think the one thing that we can say here is essentially what we're saying this whole time is it was a sanity check.
Yeah, and it was just really good to see that. It makes us feel like we can keep moving forward with what we're doing.
But there's two things that I wanted to recognize. I wanted to just say, okay, I hope that you guys liked that Magic the Gathering bit at the start because I thought you guys would like that because I know that they've got a Magic the Gathering channel. It's their side channel.
Oh, I didn't know about that, yeah.
And I hope you can see that we've improved our audio, like a lot. We've put a lot of work into it. Unfortunately, we were essentially in a tin shack before.
Yeah, but now we've done some adjustments, moved to a dedicated space and everything like that. So, people have told us that it's a lot better now, so that's good. We wanted to just say thank you for the shout out because it was a really good sanity check for us.
Yeah, it was a sanity check.
Yeah, and we hope that you can see that the audio has been really cleaned up because the cicadas are going like crazy in the background, but it doesn't come through now.
Yeah, we really hope you liked the episode, and thank you everybody for joining along so far. So if you don't know who the Poorhammer podcast is, please go along and take a look. Okay, everybody, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.